we were going in the right direction and then got turned around. Did it happen overnight? Absolutely not. America has an ugly past. There's no denying that. Revisionists have tried to rewrite our history for a better part of the last 200 years. America saw its first big divide during the Civil War. The cause for it, to keep the Union together and expel slavery, remains a topic of debate to this day. No, the Civil War wasn't about states' rights. It was about slavery. It was about the continuation of an ugly horror show that still haunts us today. While the Civil War succeeded in keeping the Union together, it failed to stamp out the inequities of our past. It failed to stamp out the hate and bigotry that birthed out of our ugly legacy of slavery. Over the last 150 years, our Union embarked on a more enlightened journey. Expansion of individual rights became a focus of our government. But those rights did not come easily. While on one side the Supreme Court expanded the meaning of the 14th Amendment and breadth of due process, neoconservatives in the judiciary and politics undertook a subversive movement they coined as originalism and textualism. Originalists said that they only believed the Constitution should be applied as our framers originally intended. Textualists paid more attention to the language of the Constitution and its literal meaning, not going further than to administer enumerated constitutional provisions. First of all, their logic failed on its face because the Constitution itself enunciates the mechanism for amendments to the Constitution. Further, the 9th and 10th Amendments leave room for more rights than conferred in the Bill of Rights, which happens to be the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, which evidently originalists and textualists would only limit to the original intent and the literal text. But the obviousness of that notwithstanding, neoconservatives drummed to the tune of originalism and textualism to oppose expansion of rights under our Constitution. Between 1965 and 2015, the Supreme Court expanded constitutional protections to cover historically marginalized groups and historically marginalized rights, like privacy, the right of a woman to choose whether or not to terminate her pregnancy, the right to contraceptives, the right to family association, the right against sex discrimination, and the right to same-sex marriage. Not to mention the right against being discriminated on the basis of sex, on the basis of race as well. And it seemed as if we were on the verge of a more equitable society. Not just equality, but also equity. Equality going forward and equity to repair the damage caused to marginalized groups over history. SCOTUS's composition during this time was largely progressive. We, as in the progressives and liberals, didn't look at neoconservatism as a threat to the liberal order that expanded human rights. We underestimated the movement beneath the surface that kept alive and animosity towards expanding individual rights. They wrap themselves in veils of originalism and textualism to build a body of scholarly dicta that rejected an expansive view of the Constitution. And while we underestimated their staying power, not only did they persevere, but within 10 years of overfell, the ruling that legalized same-sex marriage, they changed the composition of SCOTUS. The new radically conservative court did away with affirmative action in colleges, Roe versus Wade, the Chevron doctrine, and drafted a presidential immunity decision that rests on absolutely no constitutional ground, however attenuated. This final act proved that the neoconservative originalism, textualism positions were hogwash. They never intended to abide by those principles when they had the majority. Nowhere in the Constitution will you find a mention of presidential immunity. But the Roberts Court fashioned overwhelming presidential immunity out of thin air. In doing so, the court exposed the neoconservative hypocrisy that rules don't apply to them, and they'll bend over backwards to find a reason to create an imbalance in our constitutional order and civil society. In tandem, they radicalized politics. With Citizens United as the base, neoconservatives expanded their propaganda campaigns against women and minority rights. Citizens United also allowed unlimited corporate money to be filled into American politics, to be dumped into American politics, turning American national and even local politics now into a gladiatorial show. In mere 5 years after Citizens United, Donald Trump entered politics. He took propaganda to a whole different level. He used the veneer of populism and his popular fame from TV to seemingly offer Americans a different position, to make America great again. Quite possibly the most revisionist presidential campaign and movement in American history. Donald became the Pied Piper of the darkest stories in our history. He brought out all our ugliest demons: racism, Christo-fascist nationalism, chauvinism, Western masculinity, rejection of women's rights, and an ultimate rejection of the liberal order that had held the country together for decades. Neoconservatives publicly acknowledged their core ideals: isolationism, racism, xenophobia, and hate. The hate that spawned the Civil War had not gone away. It seethed for generations and returned in the form of MAGA. Now we must determine where we went wrong. How did we let ourselves believe that demons of the past wouldn't resurface? Did we really think racism, misogyny, bigotry, and hatred just goes away? Why were we so naive and so neglectful of how subversive movements radicalize democratic societies? Did we really think we were immune? Today, more Americans publicly endorse overturning our Constitution and implementing a dictatorship than ever before in American history, including during the Civil War. Why such disdain for our founding document and the rights enshrined in it? Why are we destroying ourselves from within? Why are we not doing what our founders did when they fought the biggest military force the world had ever seen? They did it for liberty, life, and the right to property. Nothing has changed. Today we face the largest, most powerful force in American politics. A rogue, domestic enemy president, a corrupted Congress, and a Supreme Court on the verge of being compromised. We are, after nearly 250 years, still fighting for liberty, life, and the pursuit of happiness. In this renewed struggle against oppression and betrayal, American citizens have a duty to speak up. We are privileged. We have the full protection of our Constitution backing us, and the Constitution now needs us to defend it. So it is an active campaign to uphold the rule of law, speak truth to power, resist tyranny, and not be afraid of what will happen if we speak up. Exercise your rights. Speak up for innocent people being targeted by the government. Defend the Constitution. Thank you for listening, and I'll talk to you soon.